Today, let's talk about a car unlike anything you've ever seen. A machine made of gold and carbon fiber. That's right, made of gold. This car was born with the purpose of breaking records and redefining what was previously deemed impossible. A combination of comfort, safety, and danger. Words that don't usually go hand in hand, but for some reason, they are the ones that best define this car. Of course, we are talking about the first hypercar in history. Surprisingly, this car was conceived and created by a man who was crazy enough to ask himself, what would a car be like if it were created without rules, without limits, and without homologations? And that's how it happened. From these questions, the McLaren F1 was born in 1992. But its history and dream are much older than that. What happened was that initially, McLaren was a racing car brand. You probably remember it in Formula One, dominating the 80s with Alain Prost and the legendary Ayrton Senna. That's what McLaren did. Created fast cars, put them on the track, and stacked up titles after titles. And that was their business. That was until the 1960s, when Bruce McLaren, the founder of the brand, had an idea. He decided it was time for the company to launch its first road car. But Bruce wasn't just anyone. Besides being the owner, he was known for his skill behind the wheel. He even had a successful career as a driver. At just 15, he single-handedly restored an Austin Ulster, and he started competing in regional championships at the age of 22. He made history, becoming the youngest driver to win a Grand Prix in Formula One. During his short time in the sport, Bruce stacked up a total of 4 victories and 27 podiums. But on June 2, 1970, at just 32 years old, his life was tragically cut short. It was customary for him to assist engineers in creating and testing cars, and it was during one of these routine tests that the M6 GT prototype was being evaluated. Just like the dream of creating their first road car, what happened was that during one of the laps, Bruce lost control and collided with the barrier at the Goodwood Circuit in England. He may have passed away, but his legacy lived on within each member of that company. For many years, the dream of creating this road car lingered. However, that was until someone decided it was time to shake things up, or rather, change the world. The automotive world of that era was centered around fast cars. Apparently, factors like visibility and safety were simply aspects not taken very seriously. An example of this was Bruce himself, who fell victim to such a tragedy. But it seems that in the 90s, this sentiment changed. The automotive scene was somewhat stagnant. It gave the impression that Italian brands were merely living off the past, boasting about old cars with outdated technologies. I might receive some criticism for saying this, but the Ferrari F40, despite being perfect for many, had a chassis that left much to be desired. The V12 used was practically identical to the engine Lamborghini created in the 60s. These machines were race cars handed over to anyone with enough money to buy them. You can imagine the number of fatalities that occurred. Their drivability wasn't the best, comfort was lacking, and as for maintenance, I don't even need to mention it. However, everything changed when a Japanese company created a new mold for supercars. The problem was that they didn't realize that to make a fast car, they didn't have to sacrifice the safety and comfort of the driver. And that's how the great Honda NSX was born, regarded by many as one of the best cars ever made. What distinguished this car from the others was that even though it didn't have the highest horsepower under the hood, its legacy stemmed from a combination of factors. It was comfortable, had good drivability, and its aerodynamics made this machine perfect. This combination set this car apart from the rest. And in case you didn't know, many attribute part of the success of this machine to the Brazilian driver, Ayrton Senna. He was responsible for testing and providing the necessary feedback for engineers to improve the car, playing a crucial role in the making of this machine. It's safe to say that Ayrton really liked the NSX. He even drove it to work. It was one of those cars that Gordon Murray, the designer of the British Formula One team, spotted for the first time. And it was love at first sight. Seeing that machine somehow made him realize that the car scene of that time was lacking. The brands of the time were living off a distant past, and he was sure he could do something better. For him, it was possible to go further, and that's what he did. It was the year 1988. He had just come out of an uneventful Grand Prix. During the wait for his flight at Milan Airport, with Crichton Brown, the executive responsible for recruiting Ayrton Senna, Ron Dennis, the McLaren team leader, and Mansour Odjay, a French entrepreneur. They were casually chatting until Murray brought up an interesting idea. He wanted the brand to start creating road cars. More precisely, he wanted to create the best car ever made. Odjay looked around and saw potential for this crazy proposal. Almost every brand competing in Formula One had great success selling sports cars, and Ferrari was the prime example of this. And that's how McLaren Cars was born. Creative, isn't it? Well, that was the name of the much-anticipated road car company. Now, with everything in order, they had a meeting to determine the future of that company. But what did they really want to do? Well, it was 10 hours non-stop until they reached a consensus. So they decided that if this was really going to happen, nothing could stop them, and the sky was the limit. And that's how the story of McLaren's first road car began. It was in this meeting that Murray established some rules for this car to be perfect. First, it had to weigh less than a ton, a width of 1.8 meters, and the weight had to be between the wheels. Because it had a mid-engine, it had to have a very well-distributed weight, to avoid any traction problems. Furthermore, it needed to be fast, comfortable, and safe. 3 words that don't usually go hand in hand. As we can see, there was a clear inspiration from the NSX. The idea was to create this machine with Formula One technology. After all, that was Murray's specialty. For him, the McLaren F1 had nothing to do with 0 to 100. It wasn't supposed to be a speed-focused car because it wasn't a race car, but a street car. So they formed a team and got to work. A machine without limits and without homologations. This car had 3 seats with the driver in the middle, imitating race cars. The idea was that the driver should have the greatest visibility possible, with no blind spots. At the same time, he was concerned with sporting attributes. He also thought of adding 2 more seats in case you want to take your 2 girlfriends for a ride. Because if you have a McLaren F1, obviously you have 2 girlfriends. He was certain that he had everything to create the perfect machine, the chassis, the design. But there was just one problem, the engine. That was something he didn't know how to do. He needed help. So he turned to Honda, which made perfect sense. At that time, the Japanese brand was making engines for their Formula One team, and they had just made the NSX that Murray liked so much. But after he explained what he wanted and showed the prerequisites, the brand ended up abandoning the project. This was simply because he wanted a V12 that delivered 100 horsepower per liter. In other words, he wanted a V12 with 550 horsepower that was reliable. I know that nowadays these numbers may not seem too much, and they might even be considered normal, to be honest. But for the early 90s, we're talking about something unprecedented. Now, without Honda to help, he had to find someone who would accept the challenge, someone who could deliver what he wanted. So, he got in touch with his longtime friend who had already helped on some projects. Paul Roche, a renowned German mechanic, best known for his excellent work at BMW. After Murray pitched the idea to his friend, Paul knew he had something big in his hands. So he had no other option but to accept the proposal and dive headfirst into this new project. And that's how BMW entered this story, exceeding expectations by creating an iconic S72, a V12 with 6.1 liters of capacity and 627 horsepower. This engine was just perfect. Equivalent to BMW's VTEC, this engine had optimized and efficient mechanics, making it more manageable and economical at lower speeds and more efficient, but less economical at higher speeds. However, despite its seeming perfection, this engine had one problem in Murray's eyes. It was too heavy. Murray wanted an engine weighing a maximum of 250 kilo, and it weighed 260 kilo. Can you believe it? 10 kilos over the limit. Surely he didn't like those extra 10 kilos at all. But here's an interesting fact. Since the engine had no turbo, It had a temperature problem. To address this, they came up with an unusual solution and decided to use none other than gold. As an excellent heat conductor, gold helped maintain thermal stability, reducing the risk of damage caused by excessive heat and contributing to the engine's performance and durability. But that's not the coolest part. This car is full of firsts and was the first to use intelligent brake cooling. It was also the first not to have a flywheel in the engine. For those unfamiliar, the flywheel is a kind of inertia system responsible for storing and supplying mechanical energy to the engine whenever needed. The McLaren F1 didn't have that. In my opinion, the most interesting part is that since McLaren's Formula One team innovated the use of carbon fiber in their cars, Murray thought it would be a good idea to use this material in the new machine as an attempt to make it lighter. And so they made history, becoming the first brand to use carbon fiber in a road car. This was significant because this exotic material is known for its lightness, rigidity, and high strength, making it perfect for this project. Its only drawback was that it was very expensive, but they had promised not to stop at anything. Another interesting fact is that the engine had been designed to be part of the suspension. From there, Murray began to scheme its design. The moment he discovered the engine's dimensions, he already had an idea of what its design would be like. Thousands of molds were made, all aiming for maximum downforce and minimum resistance. When they finally succeeded, they brought this car to the market with the name McLaren F1, leveraging the brand's recognition for its Formula One success. Initially presented to the public in 1993, you could purchase this machine for just $1 million. Nothing less than $1 million. And with such a hefty price tag, it's no surprise that not many units were manufactured. Only 106 cars were made, but regardless, it was a success. The first McLaren road car was crowned as the best car of all time. Bruce would be proud of how far they've come. And even though it wasn't made with the intention of being a fast car, it was an insane machine. To give you an idea, it is still the fastest naturally aspirated car ever made. And we're talking about a machine that's over 30 years old. But it's not just fast, it's well balanced. It has good drivability, is comfortable, and is also economical. Can you believe it? A $1 million car that is economical at low speeds? Performance was never the primary goal. It was a touring car that left many race cars in the dust. Even to this day, we don't have any car that compares to it. Gordon Murray was the man responsible for realizing a dream of over 30 years, a dream that began with Bruce McLaren in the 60s and ended with the brand's first and best road car, the best road car ever made in history. Each of the 106 cars was meticulously programmed to be the best. And it couldn't be any different, because that was Bruce McLaren's dream, Gordon's dream, our dream, to designate a car as the best of all time. Well, that's it for today, folks. I missed you all. We took a little break from posting, but now we're back in full swing. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you made it this far and liked our work, feel free to follow us, hit the bell to not miss any new content, and don't forget to leave your like. See you in the next time. Comment below on the next topic you'd like to see on the channel. Thanks for watching.